What's up, guys? It's Patricia from TarantulaHeaven.com. In the background, I think she's currently blocked by a leaf, but she's on the move. We have Miss Spidey, my Chilean rose hair. And today I want to talk about urticating hairs. I don't know why I was thinking about this, but for some reason I was just thinking I wanted to make a video about urticating hairs, and I was curious about, can they actually kill? Because we know that these urticating hairs are a line of defense for tarantulas. Usually in New World tarantulas, it is a line of defense that happens before biting. I think urticating hairs tend to be used as a warning sign versus like a last attempt to get you to back off, which, you know, will kind of turn the tarantula to use biting instead as a defense. I think that I was actually thinking about this because I had the experience many years ago of Spidey. This was back when I was giving her super worms, which I'm so glad that I stopped doing and switched to cockroaches instead. But Spidey would go through these weird periods of fasting, as many Chilean rose hairs do. It's stereotypical of the species. And what happened was she was not hungry this one particular time. Not odd at all. And I put a superworm in there because I think I was concerned she hadn't eaten in a while. And so I was just observing what happened. And I saw her kicking hairs at the thing for the first time. She did not attack it, did not want any part of actually eating it, but she did kick hairs at it. And it was almost like she just wanted it to stop bothering her. I think it was like moving around on her webs, and she was very irritated by this. And so, you know, I kind of observed for a while. I was like, what is happening? But all I did observe was that the thing got, I guess, stunned or frozen for a little bit. It wasn't too long, and then I eventually removed it. So it had me thinking, like, okay, so the urticating hairs did not kill that animal, but could it possibly? Because Spidey didn't necessarily do a lot of hairs. It was a very fast, like, kicking off of hairs. So I did a little research on it. It turns out, and I don't know if it's necessarily for the worms, but in terms of small mammals, these bristles that are in the urticating hairs can be very irritating, and it can actually get into the mucous membranes if it goes into in through, for example, the nose, the respiratory system. And so once in the mucous membranes, this can cause edema, which can be fatal. So not only do the bristles cause mechanical harm, but also chemical harm. It seems like, and I want to do more research on this, it seems like there is a chemical component to what is on these bristles or what they're made of. And so they're saying, like, yes, it's harmful to the skin, but also to the inside membranes of small mammals. So it makes sense why these hairs are incredibly irritating to humans, but not necessarily deadly, but for a smaller animal could be very fatal. I think that for humans, the reaction definitely depends on the tarantula species. I know some species have much worse urticating hairs than others, as well as the person. So some of us are more sensitive than others. Some people have allergies or are very reactive to these hairs. Some people have asthma, which would make them have a worse reaction if they were to breathe these hairs in. And some of us have sensitive skin. And in looking this up, it didn't surprise me to find that the Chilean rose hair does not have a big reaction. It tends to be one of the more mild reactions. But a tarantula such as the Goliath bird eater could give you like a massively painful rash. And they're saying that this could actually feel like sharp shards of fiberglass, which sounds absolutely terrible. And you may need to go to the ER. Occasionally we hear of these instances. Some examples of that might be if these hairs get into your eyes, so they can be very dangerous for the corneas. And if they are breathed in, that could also be very dangerous in cases of, say, like asthma, or just having those in your mucous membranes and respiratory system could be very harmful. So generally not fatal for humans, but on a smaller scale with a smaller animal could be very bad. And I did read that crickets and worms, like in that example that I gave you in the beginning, they don't necessarily have this reaction. Like, yes, it does stun them, but because their exterior is kind of hard, like that exoskeleton, it doesn't really impact them the same way that it would with mammals. So I thought that was interesting, but it makes sense that it would just kind of like freeze them for a little bit and then they would go back to normal. That may just be more of like a freeze response, playing possum versus like, oh, these things are actually hurting me, or it could be both. I don't know. So I thought that was really interesting. I know we give a lot of attention to the lethality of bites and venom, but urticating hairs are also a pretty serious line of defense for tarantulas, and so I think it is important that we know the risks. And if we do have small mammals in our home, we want to be very careful. We don't want to expose them to our tarantulas. Like, for example, if you decide to hold your tarantula out in the open in a space where your cat might be or your dog, and that tarantula decides to get scared and kick hairs, not only you, but also your pet could be impacted by that. And they're gonna have a way worse reaction than you, most likely, because they're smaller. And they're also not going to know to avoid that area. They might even be more curious about it. So I think that it's really important to think about, you know, these things are dangerous for other creatures more so than they are for us, and to be careful, be more careful. So let me know what you guys think about that. I have never been haired. I have had Spidey kick hairs at me once. It was very mild in terms of how she kicked. They did not get on me at all, luckily. So I don't actually know what that feels like. I have had a history of sensitive skin in the past, so it is possible that I would have a worse reaction than others, but I don't know. It hasn't happened. I pray it never happens. And but I'm sure that some of you have, and if you have, I'd love to hear your experiences. All right, guys, thank you for listening and watching, and thank you to Spidey for moving around a little bit during this video, and I'll see you next week for Tarantula Tuesday. Take care. Bye.